Okay, let's get this. Cool. So, how you doing, buddy? Welcome to the What podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's
Well,
it's cool to have a solo gig going on. I'm the star of the show, and we're
yeah,
international
yeah, exactly. This is my first one-on-one international podcast, so it's a real privilege for me. It's really cool. Hello.
now. Love it. I'm here. Yeah,
Oh, sorry, I thought I'd lost you. Right, we have Kemazabi. I don't know a crazy amount about you. Obviously, I've seen you on the Camel Finance chats every now and
yeah,
then. We
yep. Me
interact a
and
little
Kemo
bit
get along
through,
real well.
yeah, we interact a little bit through chat. And you come on the podcast last Sunday, which was really cool. And I thought, oh, that'd be so interesting just to have a one-on-one with Kemazabi and get to know him a little bit better and his views. So, can you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, yeah, and that kind of shapes my views most likely. You know, we're all kind of products of our environment, and we progress through life and have our views shaped by that. So yeah, a trader, a full-time trader. I trade all time frames. Some guys will trade the daily. I'll trade weekly, daily, down to a 1 hour, down to a 15-minute chart. That's kind of how I make my living. Learned how to read charts over the past decade or so.
Wow.
And the reason why I got into it was back in the 2008 financial crisis. I lost everything. Like I was down to nothing, had no assets, just completely wiped out. Employment was really bad. And I was like, I don't want this to happen again. I have
Okay.
to learn how to manage this stuff so I don't end up in the same position again because it was really bad. So started to learn markets, started off slowly. I'm really risk averse. I really don't take to risk very quickly. So I studied markets for probably 2 years before putting any capital on the line. Just learned what the markets are doing and why. Started off with the Wyckoff method, uh, got a course, started reading up on it, and learned everything I could. Then got into Elliott Wave, and then it sent me down like a rabbit hole of all types of trading methods. And I was like, everything has a use. Um, so I've tried to learn as many as possible. I just love the charts. I always have. Just really with the internet expanding the way it has, you have that more at your fingertips. So I was able to learn quite a bit quite rapidly. Yeah, and then just I've been doing my own thing for quite a while. I'm part of a few trading groups, give advice where I can. I give trade setups where I can, and came across Camel Finance. And once I saw his stuff, I was like, oh, that's a legitimate trader. Like
Yeah.
I like him.
Yeah.
Started following him. We started communicating, and we hit it off pretty well. Um, yeah, and then that brought me to you and and all the Watt podcasts and
Yeah.
creative precious metals.
Yeah. The crazy stuff on Cpms channel sometimes.
Yeah, well, it's kind of branching off from your original channel, and now kind of going into the Watt podcast and getting different aspects of things that you want to touch on, which is I think is so cool.
Yeah, it's just quick, very quickly going back to so back in 2008, was you an actual pro trader then?
No, no, not at
Oh,
all.
right. Okay. Okay.
Just work in construction.
All
I
right.
was in the
Okay.
real estate, kind of doing the real estate bubble, flipping houses where you
Yeah.
buy them, renovate them, sell them.
Right.
That was going pretty well. Then I got into customer work where I would renovate bathrooms, kitchens, drywall work and stuff, and then got involved with insurance work, uh, helping people after tragedies happen in their house.
Yeah.
So got really efficient at it and found a good project manager that I was working with, and yeah, it was really great.
Cool.
Yeah, then financial markets are once you learn how to do them, it's like the key to escaping it all. Now I kind
Yeah.
of do what I want. And
Yeah.
I don't want to do something I don't. If I do, then hey,
Yeah.
I did retire from all construction a few years back, and then I got bored. I'm
Yeah.
just sitting there trading, looking at charts, and I was like, I need to do something.
Yeah.
Uh, so some guys, they'll start a YouTube channel. I wasn't really about all that. Um, I just find it weird to be on social media, but yeah, I'm doing it now, obviously. But I see a need for it at this point. But yeah, I was retired, but then I went back to it, kind of part time, kind of on call. I'll do it here and there, but
Yeah.
nothing like I was before. I was really working pretty hard.
Yeah. It's,
Um, but now with the
it's
social media stuff, I kind of see a need for it because a lot of people aren't, there's a lot of new market participants,
yeah.
and they don't know what they're doing. I'm trying to protect people, really. And I think Camel's trying to do the same with his channel.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really important. So
Hmm.
that's interesting, really. So it was a bit of a side hustle back in the day. And obviously you went through a process and ended up doing it full time. Is this, I mean, not knowing the American marketplace too much, and I don't know that many American people actually, so this is really cool. Is are lots, would you say quite a few people are dabbling in like the markets as a side hustle? Or
Yeah,
do a lot of
yeah.
American
Well,
people do that?
yeah, people that I talk to certainly, and I think it's more prevalent in the past probably 3 years.
Hmm.
Uh, People have a portfolio and they kind of check their phone more than they used to, like 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think what really brought a lot of retail or a lot of new participants was cryptocurrencies and how Bitcoin was just going up back in 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
And that brought new market participants. And then they saw crypto as a scam, but that got them into investing into the stock market, various companies.
Hmm.
They were more sophisticated at that point, but then we have bubble after bubble, and people want to jump into these high flying stocks and stuff. And yeah, you definitely see more now than you did back then. So I come
Yeah.
across people and mainly talk finance because they're like, you know how to read these charts, right? I was like, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, what do you think of this one? I was like, yeah, that looks good. Oh, this one, no, get out. Here's your take profit. Get out of that one.
Exactly. Yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it? I mean, I haven't been in the market. I'm not a trader or anything like that. I just got an avid interest in investing in certain aspects at my time of life, and it's just been an amazing journey for me because I feel like I've started somewhere, got all excited about something, and then as my journey's improved, and I was going to ask you the same thing, as my journey's not improved, gone along, and through that educational process, which is continual, of course, and talking to more people and finding some people to trust, that journey meant that my mindset has changed immensely once I've started to know more about how the financial system works. Is that been a big thing for you on your journey?
It was a progress in that direction for sure.
Yeah,
So like you were saying that you kind of learned about investing and putting your money to work or protecting your capital
yeah,
with gold, silver,
yeah,
and stuff like that. The way I started was I started as an investor, and I'm like, I just need to learn how to invest, and I'll keep doing my standard job. And my investments did really well, and I'm like, well, wow, this is really awesome. But then the investments started going down again.
yeah.
Okay, well, I could have got out. Then I could get back in.
Hmm.
So then I started to read chart patterns, how to kind of go in and out, like on a weekly basis or something like that, or every few months. And I was like, this makes sense. I could, get more capital. And
Yeah,
then that winded up doing it on a daily chart. And then I'm like, okay, I said, this is even faster. So then I can make, one or two trades per week.
yeah,
And then it gets all the way down. Like I can do this on a 2 minute chart and I can do this 3 times a day if I want to.
yeah.
So yeah, I learned how to do it all the way down. And that kind of changes my thought process on how I handle my investments slash trading. It kind
Okay.
of builds my process. But
Hmm.
then in the later years, I guess since looking into Bitcoin, that made me think of money way differently. Now
Mm.
I'm looking at gold like Bitcoin. These are two totally different assets. I think they have two totally different capabilities. but it changes the way you think about your in the US, our dollars, basically what our money is doing, what it means,
Yeah.
and how it's created. Um, and so a lot of people don't even know how money is created. They think, oh, money printer go, brrr,
Yeah.
and it's not quite the case. Like in the United States, I'm assuming this happens with every central bank, but it's created through debt. Like the
Yeah.
money supply is increased when somebody goes and takes out a loan at their bank to go buy a house. So that
Yeah.
mortgage is the creation of money.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't think about it like that. I know
Mm.
some people that are very well versed in finance and they don't see it. That's the way it is. But everything that I've studied says it's happening at your local banks. They're just mandated to create money out of nothing.
Yeah.
So once you look into that and try to wrap your head around that, it leads you down a whole rabbit hole of the history of modern monetary theory and the ways that we're kind of kept in a perpetual state of chasing after a devaluing currency asset and it's getting stolen at the same time.
Yeah.
And we're trying to keep up with it, but through taxation, through um, even speeding tickets on a local level, you get a little speeding ticket. That's just your municipality is just trying to extract that little bit.
Mhm.
A few years back, probably 5, 10 years ago, I was looking at my phone bill, my cable bill, just various bills, and they all seem to hover around $100 a month. And it's like
Yeah.
it just seems like everybody wanted to extract that $100, and that was
Yeah.
their limit, and
Yeah.
nothing under, nothing over.
Yeah.
That was the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Like, okay, everybody wants their hundred for the month. Geez. So yeah, you learn to get out of that mindset and be like, oh, certain things I don't need that.
Yeah.
I need to put my capital to work for me to try to get ahead of this rat race that we're kind of put into.
Hmm.
So yeah, then I learned put your money in something that's not getting devalued, such as well, me, I'm more in silver than gold, which I'm thinking about switching um,
Okay.
some of
That's
my assets.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, silver's not bad. It definitely runs faster, but the charts are saying good things about gold. So
They are. They are indeed. So do you think, oh, I've got 2008, so that's what, oh, that's a few years, isn't it?
about
So
18 years.
yeah. So do you think this process that you've learned and understand and educated yourself has been accelerated over the last 3 or 4 years?
Hmm.
When you look at money, especially with, the problems we had with COVID and the God
I
knows how
think
much
I think it
money
was
that was
during
printed.
that. Yeah, it was more during that COVID period when they had all the lockdowns and the news feeds were all just such a mess. I just kind of walked away from all that stuff and just went studying like what's actually happening with the money. They're printing a bunch of money, but inflation is not spiking up yet. Why? And
Yeah.
um, that accelerated my learning curve. After 2021, 2022, it's all kind of made sense to me. And then it made me want to kind of educate people on what I've seen, um, which is why I wrote everything that I wrote on my Twitter profile.
Sure.
Kind
Yeah.
of wrote that up to kind of give people a heads up, which has been pretty well received.
Yeah.
Some eye opening stuff for some people. Other people already understand it. That's cool. Just trying to
Mhm.
give everybody a
Reminder.
different view.
Yeah.
Well, different view from what they're used to.
Mm.
People are like, no, I go to work, I get a paycheck, I spend my money. It's like, yeah, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes that you're not thinking of, and knowing those things that are happening could help position yourself for success in the long term.
Sure.
Like having a vision. Where do I want to be 10 years from now? Not necessarily, how am I going to pay my rent next month? You know, get ahead of the game.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I probably talk to quite a few people when I'm out and about at work, and it still amazes me how many people although it's not a criticism because I was one of them. We're just on this constant hamster wheel of
Yeah.
of just grinding round and round and round. And I was speaking to my wife today, funny enough, in the garden, and I was saying that isn't it amazing that 50 years ago, only 50 years ago, how life has changed in those 50 years from the fact that husband just went to work. You could probably still get a mortgage. If you had a fairly decent job,
Yeah.
get a mortgage, you could get a house, your wife stayed at home, then you could have kids, maybe you could have a sort of half decent carish, depending on what you was earning. But it was all amalgamated around one person earning money. And yet, within 50 years, we're in this crazy world of. I'll give you an example. My son's just bought a house. He's got a very good job, earns very good money. His partner has got a very good job, earns very good money, but they have to both work. They're thinking about
Oh
getting
wow.
yeah, oh crikey, yeah, to be able to do that. They're thinking of getting a dog, but they're going to put it into doggy daycare, which I think I'd thinking, what? And I'm thinking, where did doggy daycare come from? And it's all a result of recognizing that people can't stay at home like they used to. They can't look after
Yeah.
their children. They can't look after their pets, or there's an example there. But I was just thinking, wow, what a change in 50 years! What a change! And that's a bit of that really keeps my feet on the ground to keep educating myself to find out what's going on. Because that's so excessive in my head. That's like one and a half generations. That's all.
Yeah, and if the trend continues,
Yeah,
as a trader that looks at a chart, if you chart that data out into the future, what does that look like? In another
exactly.
50 years,
Yeah,
it could probably accelerate. You could say 25 years. What does that look like?
yeah,
A total separation of family, and it's the state kind of is educating your children, and then you don't have a say in it. I mean, they're kind of already doing stuff like that
yeah,
in and around the United States, where children, well, anybody above 12 years old, under 18 is allowed to decide certain medical procedures like an abortion or
yeah.
kind of a sex change operation. It's like
Hmm.
you're kind of young to be thinking about such things.
Mm,
So then 20 years from now, you think, well, if the state is very, very involved in the family unit, they may be able to do such things.
yeah,
It'll just be normal at that point.
yeah,
Whereas, like you say, now the new normal is, where do I have my doggy daycare or put my children in the daycare
yeah,
because I've got to work? But you're
yeah,
paying for that daycare too. Like, how much does daycare cost? Like, I haven't checked on that, but I know it's pretty expensive. So, say you have two people working in a household, and one of them is basically half their paycheck is going to go to daycare, I would
exactly.
think. It's like, is it really worth it at that point? Where if you work as a team, you have one person that wins the bread. Is it possible for the other person to just kind of support what the main breadwinner is doing
Mm,
to get them, in and out the door, provide for well, home economics, basically,
yeah.
to save money, cut down on costs.
Mhm.
I don't know, that's kind of the way I see it. But some people aren't in that position, I guess.
No, and even to be able to afford the mortgage in the first place, you have to have two good incomes.
Hmm.
Now, especially in certain parts of the UK. Otherwise, you've got no chance of even getting on the housing ladder. And what I didn't mention was back in the day, even when I bought my first property, your mortgage was 25 years. Now it's 36 to 40.
Oh,
No.
wow.
Oh, crikey, yeah. 36 to 40. Yeah. 35 to 40 years. Um, and
I
that's
don't
a,
know that we have that over here yet. Yeah, they might have a product like that, but I know 30 years is the standard mortgage
yeah.
in the US.
So
35 to 40. That's really
35
pushing
to
it.
40. Yeah, definitely. And that's the only way you can.
get
afford.
the payment loan. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've got the repayment. It's ridiculous. It really is. But it's no wonder everyone's getting a bit fed up, really, to be honest. Because like if you're not going to get on the housing ladder until you're 25, that's pushing you on to sort of like retirement age, and you're still having to work your guts out to pay for it.
Yeah.
You
And
know, it's weird.
likely, if you're even able to even get into a house like that,
Mm,
um, a lot of people, I don't think a lot of people are going to be able to in the years coming forward.
no.
I'm expecting home prices to potentially come down.
Yep.
Um, a lot of people are expecting a housing crash, but
Yep.
maybe we don't have a crash, but I think prices will come down temporarily. But at the same time, if we do have any slowdown in the economy, your banks aren't going to want to be lending if there's a possibility there are no banks when we're going into something totally different.
Yeah.
But are you even going to be able to find a borrower or a lender to borrow from to buy a house in the next 5 years?
Yep.
Are interest rates going to support that? I see interest rates going higher
Yep.
in probably the next 10 years,
Hmm.
just based upon a potential trend reversal that happened in 2020 with
Okay.
regards to the yields. So I'm expecting higher higher rates, which means your payments are going to go up on any new mortgages. So you're going to need a job that pays even more. That could be inflationary. This is like a long term thing over the next 10 to 15 years is kind of what I'm talking about.
Mm.
So you have to find a way to well, make your money make money for you.
Hmm.
I think we're all kind of pushed out to preserving our capital, but also going out on the risk curve to try to somehow get ahead of it. Um,
Hmm.
where stocks, you have the Magnificent Seven in the United States. That's where people are putting their money to accelerate some kind of earnings. So maybe you could think of that as like your second household income at that point,
Sure.
instead of having your wife go to work. But it takes a lot. Like I did it. Took me years to learn how to do that in markets, and
Okay.
maybe some people don't want to have the same drive because I basically shut out the world for probably 2 to 2.5 years and worked probably 16 to 18-hour days
Mm.
and constantly had some kind of podcast or educational material running in my ear the whole time,
Yeah.
until I got to a point where, all right, I can relax now. And that was the plan all along.
Yeah.
Just put my head down and hustle for 3 or 4 years, and hopefully something good comes out of it.
Hmm.
If not, then I'm no worse off.
Yeah. That's very true.
Yeah, it's not everybody has that drive. I don't want to say that I'm super special, but from the people that I know around me, it doesn't look like they have that type of drive. Where they're like, I just want to live my life. And I'm like, yeah, I get that,
Yeah.
but sometimes if you want to get ahead, you really got to take that jump.
Mm.
You know?
And I don't know about you, but I think that's probably even more important with the potential of what's ahead than maybe what that could have been like if you went back 10 years.
Yeah.
Do you think that?
So going back 10 years and going forward in the future 10 years.
Yeah, what I meant was that maybe that mindset's probably more important today than what it was 10 years ago, although it was important 10 years ago, if that makes sense, or 20 years ago.
So,
Because
so
because
with
because the whole global economic situation is changing rapidly.
very rapidly,
So it
and
makes it more
that's kind of
important to sort of try and get ahead now.
yeah, but you need to the learning has to be accelerated. Like
Exactly.
that, you're running out of time. Kind
Yeah.
of the way that I'm really running out of time to be able to uh, position yourself appropriately.
Yeah.
So like I took years to learn what I'm doing, and now I'm seeing like you've got months maybe to learn what you're supposed to be doing. Not an ideal situation to try to further yourself, but every little bit counts. I mean, it's just like
Yeah.
you're stacking, that you say once a week, I'm going to buy an ounce of silver, nothing
Yeah.
major.
Yeah.
It's just a step towards the right direction.
Yeah.
And that's freaking awesome. That's great advice for anybody. It's like just take 20, $30 out of your paycheck. You're not going to miss it.
Yeah.
It's you're missing a coffee and an ice cream at the end of the week. You're not going to miss it.
Mm.
It could potentially benefit you. And once you start doing that, the mindset starts to change. You're like, oh, I've got money
Yeah.
just sitting over there and it's doing its thing. It's appreciating in value. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, this is cool. I like this.
Mm. Yeah.
Little baby stuff. So anything's better than nothing. Like I say, you really got to learn stuff fast, but the point is learn what you can and start to implement what you can, what you understand, as soon as possible.
Yeah. How,
Like I tell the young people, like you're 20, if you're 20 years old or something like that, like
yeah.
one of the first things you should be learning is finance and how money works.
Yeah.
Because if I knew when I was 18 to 20 years old what I know now, oh, it's game over.
Yeah.
It's easy life at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, you learn through the mistakes and like, wow, I should have learned that earlier.
Yeah.
So now I'm telling everybody that's younger, no time like the present. Like I know you think it's stupid and it's like extra schoolwork, but you'll thank yourself, or maybe
Yeah.
you'll thank me for recommending to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's interesting that. So to give us a bit of a talk to me like I'm 18 and what would your I don't like saying advice, but what would your what would you recommend possibly that any 18, 20-year old should be starting to do to maybe protect what's coming, protect them from what's
Yeah.
coming?
The,
How
the
would you go
main
about how would you go about that?
main thing that I tell everybody is learn how money works because it's
Yeah.
not what you think it is.
Yeah.
Um, same thing is like telling people to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I usually don't tell people so much buy Bitcoin. I say learn about Bitcoin
Yeah.
because it doesn't matter if you buy it or not. If
Mm.
you learn about Bitcoin,
Yeah.
it sends you down that rabbit hole pretty quickly. There's a lot of information out there.
Yeah.
And then from that viewpoint, you can start to be like, well, okay, there's something here where I can start investing into not necessarily Bitcoin or gold or the stock market, but you're investing in yourself to have the understanding to move forward in the future when you do have capital.
Hmm.
Because I'm assuming like everybody, when they're between the years of 18 and 25, you have some kind of windfall of decent amount of capital
Yeah.
that comes across your way, whether it's $1,000 or $5,000. It's like, yeah, I got this, but I really want to buy a really sweet car or
Yeah.
something like that. And it's like, but if you understand money, you realize that you can put that money into something that'll grow, and then 5 years later, you get an even nicer car, or you get the same car and still have money left to spare.
Exactly.
So spending, like the generation that I see coming up, 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds, they just spend money like it's like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that might speak to what they believe in the money and how the system is. And it's like, well, what does it matter? I'll just get a job and get more of this
Yeah.
paper.
Yeah.
Um, they're disrespecting the currency, is what I always say.
Yeah.
And that's why I would say to the young people, I'm like, you guys have no respect for your currency. And personally, I don't blame you. I really
Yeah.
don't, because
Yeah.
it's not money. I don't think the governments respect the money. So
No.
why should we?
Yeah.
So, yeah, the thing that I mainly tell people is learn about money, how it's created, and why people are stuck in the rat race over and over, because it's all tied together. It would be a 4 or 5 hour conversation if we really went into it all.
Yeah.
Um,
Or they can
of
listen to
course,
this
transfer.
podcast.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, your podcast, I think we're going to be touching on that subject more and more in the
Sure.
future, how money works, how money operates,
Yeah.
um, and try to educate people on it. Maybe that could be a recurring theme that me and you could just go over, once every few weeks. We're just be like, huh,
100%.
we got a lesson here.
Yeah.
Let's have the next lesson.
Yeah. 100%. It's so important. And it's really, I keep saying this, it's so cool to get someone else's point of view in a big Western um, economy, you know. Um,
Yeah.
it's because there's a repetition in the message most of the time. Um, the problems we've
Yeah,
got
slightly
here.
different angle,
Yeah,
but once you see it, you can okay, so like you have a viewpoint from your angle, a viewpoint from my angle, and you can triangulate that and kind of get a 3D picture, which is pretty cool.
exactly. And the interesting thing from my point of view, just listening to you there, is the concept of understanding what the money is so important because that it then becomes irrelevant what you're doing or where you are because I always look at it, there's a constant. It represents the same thing wherever you are.
A common
Especially,
theme.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just your circumstances may be different, you know, but the constant is the currency, is the money, you know. Um, so that's
And the
really
manipulation.
interesting. Sorry.
It's the manipulation of that money.
Yes. Yes. Do you want to go there yet?
Yeah, like I watched this there was a movie that was done, a documentary on modern monetary theory.
Hmm.
It was on YouTube. I think it cost like $6 to view it. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of modern monetary theory, but there is a large portion of the government that is, and I wanted to understand their viewpoint, what they're thinking,
Yeah.
and they view the money as something that comes from the government and then comes back to the government.
Yeah.
They issue the currency and then they tax it back. And
Yeah.
once they get enough of the taxes back, they can reissue the money.
Okay.
Um, Kind of speaks to how we have these booms and busts
Sure.
in the economy, slowdowns and speed ups. It seems like they're doing it on purpose to get that money back into the government so that they can redeploy it at a later date in the direction that they want, where they pick the winners and losers in the stock markets. Like we
Okay.
want big tech to be the winners here. That's where we're deploying our capital to kind of get society more involved in an online presence or something like that. So like in the year 2000, I was actually going to make a video about this, but might as well do it here.
Okay.
In the year
Cool.
2000, we had the .com bubble, right?
Hmm.
And there were a lot of .com companies that started putting up websites online leading up to the year 2000 before the bubble collapsed. What emerged out of that was everything that people thought was coming like right away. It kind of got implemented about 5 years later after the capital was redeployed. After the housing bubble, you had a collapse again. So that's money coming back to the government basically through taxation or the destruction of the capital through the stock market going down. The government can then print money again through modern monetary theory. Um, and then we went more towards streaming online, uh, Netflix, Facebook, uh, Twitter. Those really expanded and kind of make their own economy there. YouTube, it's all been getting very big since 2013, 2014.
Hmm.
So somebody's steering society in this direction after these major drawdowns in markets and kind of when everything's devastating through financial calamities or banking crises, if you will. The money comes back to whoever is running this and they redeploy it in the direction that they want. COVID-19, that had a very nice drawdown in markets, had some kind of banking crisis. Um, the repo market for the banks and central banks was all out of whack in September of 2019. Market collapses, then they're able to print trillions of dollars coming out of that with very little bit of inflation, considering how much money was printed out there.
Sure.
Um, so now we've got 2024, we have a big boost in these AI ideas, artificial intelligence stocks, and even some cryptocurrency ideas. They're like, oh, this stuff's going to do really well in 2024, 2025.
Hmm.
We're right on the cusp of really expanding with this. Well, what usually happens is a big drawdown in the markets. And then 3 to 4 years later, they start expanding into that idea that we thought was going to happen before the crash.
Wow,
So,
that makes so much sense.
doesn't it though? And it's like, these are like times where they changed the direction of society. You can go back to the 1929 Great Depression. That was a big one where you had the advent of radio and even television, I think may have started around then, but mainly radio. It was like, this is revolutionary. We've got radios in everybody's home. We've got cinema that's really taken off here. This is a new paradigm. We're going into a new economy, and then it crashes. Then what comes out of that is, communications across the country in whatever nation you're in. We've got telephones everywhere, um, radios everywhere, television, and it kind of built a new economy coming out of that. When everybody thought in 1920s, the Roaring Twenties, everybody thought it was going right then. The
Yeah.
economy is going to go in this direction, and we're just going to ride it and make millions.
Yeah.
No, it was an opportunity to crash it and then rebuild it in that image, and somebody profited from it, obviously. But these are um, these crises are opportunities for the hidden hand to come in and kind of shoo people in one direction or corral everybody in one direction. That's what it seems like. But doesn't that make sense? Isn't that like eye opening? Like, wow, yeah, things do change after these crashes.
Yeah, that's really, I've never sort of really deeply viewed it like that. It kind of makes sense because they're almost like little resets, aren't they?
Hmm.
Literally
Yeah,
like
and
a little reset.
it
So,
resets the monetary base for the governments because you're not going to have inflation coming out of such a crash. So the government can push forth capital and invest into certain areas to build up parts of the economy that they want to thrive.
yeah. And so,
Modern monetary theory.
yeah, so let me try to get my head around that a little bit. I always say to Camel sometimes talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old, and I'd understand it. But so are we saying that obviously we go through like a bit of an affluent expansion spell, and then when the new ideas start to pop in, trying to work out why this would happen in my head from a puppeteering point of view, the people that will really capitalize out of it. So things start to change and we start to see a directional change in the way we do stuff. And you outline that quite well with cryptocurrencies and AI and bits and
Mhm.
pieces. So I think we're all on
Mhm.
the cusp of seeing if we get our heads out of our ass that things are going to change very soon. So by almost re by almost resetting that by going through a crash of what you're saying, then the value that's in the current economy or in stocks and shares and bits and pieces is vastly reduced. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Because it
it's mainly
crashes
just it's mainly
and
destroyed. Yeah,
yeah, so that's destroyed and gone.
yeah,
Then
because the creation of money is lent into existence, and once you have the defaults happening on that, or
yeah,
they pay back those loans, the money is destroyed. So that reduces the money supply.
okay. So then we go through that reset process, and
Mhm.
then the new ideas that people want to get into at a different level to what I'm used to thinking. I'm on about the people in the background will then
Mhm.
lobby or be in close contact with government. The governments then borrow the money and get that back into the economy to grow in those areas. And the guys that are investing in those low cost shares, stocks, whatever, crypto, then are in a position to make hay from the next boom as it goes forward. Is that sort of
Oh,
sound right?
oh, for sure, for sure. So
Yeah,
just looking back at the dot-com bubble,
sure.
a nice example. There was like five or six main search engines for the internet. There's
Okay.
five or six of them, and Google won out. So you have to you have to pick the winners and pick the losers. And there was somebody that said Google's the one. Like there was probably a better one, but Google's the one that won out. It
Yeah.
really doesn't matter which technology is better.
Yeah.
It matters who's positioned in what and who is closest to the money printer,
Got it.
essentially. Who
Oh,
is who's allowed to run? Because whoever's controlling this, they allowed Google to be the main search engine
yeah.
for the majority of people.
Boys
So then
club
we would have
theory.
something. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
the George Carlin Club theory.
Yeah.
It's a big club, and you're not in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe
But
in it. I really do.
what we try to do is look at the charts and we try to see where the club is because there's
Okay.
patterns in the chart that we see. There's a setup here that looks like capital is slowly flowing into this particular company,
Sure.
or this particular company, or we're about to have a breakout on this particular company. And that speaks to, hey, this is the direction that they're pushing the narrative.
Yeah.
Even Lockheed Martin stock or Raytheon, the military contractors for the United States,
Yeah.
they have publicly traded companies. So you can look on their charts and you can see whether or not it's an accumulation or distribution or a breakout, or you have buy setups and sell setups just like any other chart, and they all work the same.
Mm.
And when you have a buy setup, you say, okay, this has a target of up here. If it's going up there for Lockheed Martin, why is there so much investment going into this company? Means
Okay.
maybe we have some military conflicts coming. Not that I'm necessarily seeing that. I actually have to check that chart and get an update on it, which I do about once a month
Yeah.
just to keep tabs on it. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's the reset kind of works. Is capital's going to flow. The hidden hand, whoever it is pushing it in that direction. They pick the winners and losers, and
Yeah.
we just have to try to ride along with them.
Okay. That's fascinating. That is. That kind of so much makes sense because then for me, for the certain things that I'm interested in, Bitcoin's one of them. I quite often think to myself, why is it? It's an interesting thing with Bitcoin with me because pre the ETF's launch, pre that, then the narrative that I could ever pick up was from a probably a select group of people that believed in Bitcoin in a probably in a different way to what maybe the people in the boys club look at it, if that makes sense. And then and then
Yeah,
and
so
then
that's a
I've sort of
stretch.
sorry. So I was sort of following a narrative, thinking, yeah, that bang, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I learned a lot about money and all that sort of stuff. And then the ETFs come along. There's a lot of hype pre that. There was a lot of hype on it from the narrative of the same sort of people, but there was no real big talk from the people that apparently like BlackRock and all that sort of thing at my level of communication. And then I've watched the Bitcoin, from obviously from January this year, and I've plotted my own sort of closing figures every day, and I just keep watching it. I'm thinking, well, this isn't really playing out the way people said it would probably play out. Why? Why? And then it sort of kicked off. Why? And then that took me down a rabbit hole of trying to understand almost what you're talking about. Now we've got different players in the game
Yeah,
with a mentality that I'm not privy to.
yeah,
Totally.
but it makes perfect sense though if you really think about it. They
Yeah,
have a
100%.
totally different style of investing.
Mm,
So the ETF opens up the doors to more capital that can flow in from traditional finance
mm.
that were previously they would have had regulatory difficulty in getting into
Yeah,
price exposure to Bitcoin.
yeah,
I personally don't like the ETFs unless if that's your only option, but
yeah,
I'd say buy the real thing, similar to
absolutely.
gold,
Yeah,
physically. But the price action on a Bitcoin ETF, why it trades the way it does now, and I went over this with Camel, like what's price doing here, and you think how far it ran from the bottom was 38, 39,000,
yeah,
and it went to 73,000.
yeah,
So that's close to a doubling. I think it's up 85%
Yeah,
since the bottom after the ETF launch.
yeah,
And most of these traditional finance players and hedge funds, they've never seen something move that way in their entire career.
sure.
Of course, you have some weird ones like Cisco would have done that during the dot-com bubble.
Yeah,
You certainly have Nvidia, but they're unicorns. They don't happen very often.
yeah,
And this particular play happened, within weeks. And it's like, well, okay, I have to rebalance because this is too heavy in my portfolio now.
yeah,
Because my clients will see my portfolio is up and they want it to stay that way. So they rebalance and
yeah,
okay, we're back in alignment. So yeah, after a 80% gain, yeah, I could see somebody taking some profits
yeah,
because they don't care about the technology. They don't care about Bitcoin. They don't care
absolutely.
about it.
Yeah,
It's a trading instrument for them. They don't care about gold. They're looking to profit their shareholders and their clients if they can. More so their shareholders. That takes priority. But
yeah, yeah,
what I see the market doing.
yeah. And that's had an effect on the actual spot price.
Well, yeah, uh, that brings on a whole other can of worms where you have the spot price that is affected by the ETFs.
Yeah,
The ETFs take in money and they have a 55-day window
yeah.
before they have to actually allocate that capital to spot Bitcoin.
What?
So anytime in that month and a half window, if they see a good opportunity to buy, they buy it.
Yeah,
Um, but if the price is at all time high, it's like, I'll wait for it to come down a little bit so I can have a redemption and catch a profit on the spread.
yeah,
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, these Black Rocks and Vanguards and whatever other company like that, they're
yeah,
ruthless. They don't care.
yeah. And you can see that happening though, can't you? You can literally see that happening.
Well, yeah, yeah. Every time so they want to stop out traders or get people panicked.
Yeah,
So they push the price down into liquidity
yeah,
and see if they can get people to sell them what they need. If they need to fill their orders because they have a redemption period, they need it to happen. They need to push price down,
yeah,
or they need to push price up. It doesn't matter. They need to somehow buy Bitcoin.
yeah,
Obviously, the cheaper way to do it is to push price down
yeah.
via futures markets. They can short it at the same time they're buying it, and that levels off the buy and sell pressure. Same thing with gold. They do the same thing with gold.
Yep. Yeah.
Like any,
Yeah. It's
they're
interesting,
good at.
isn't it? So I feel so much more educated already. And fried my brain. We're gonna have to do this quite a bit, Kim, I think. I think
I know it could be a lot of information really quickly, and it's like, okay, wow, uh,
yeah.
you need to take a break.
No, no, I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine because I'm sort of trying to steer you through like a very 5-year-old's journey, and then we can dig into the weeds at another time, you know. That's
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
yeah, that's really interesting. Really, really interesting. So, if do you think that we are approaching another sort of mini reset or reset sort of time coming up?
It's either a quick something similar to the COVID type of flash crash thing that would go on,
Yeah,
or it should be way more prolonged than that. It should
yeah.
be more like a 6 year to 8 year period, not necessarily in markets, but more the global economy would have
Okay.
a contraction of that magnitude. The markets, I would expect them to rebound quite rapidly, um, just because the money expansion that I'm expecting to come once it does come. The hiccup that you have there is the massive amounts of debt worldwide.
Yeah.
This is something that I've written about. It's a big debt time bomb
Hmm.
just waiting to just blow up. If we do have problems in the bond markets, like the sovereign bond markets, you guys have the gilt market over there. We have the treasury market. If we can't find buyers because they don't trust them as much anymore, that could cause huge, huge problems. And that would be a real financial reset because
Yeah.
we currently have our whole system is built on debt. It's all a
Yeah.
debt system. So if the debt blows up and nobody's interested in it anymore, which personally I think this takes more like 10 years to pull off because there's just so much debt, so much capital allocated in this. But if it happens really, really quickly, like sovereign debt defaults across the board, that's just your quick reset. And then we're going to have a period where you don't have much economic expansion until we figure out a solution or a new financial system to build on top of again.
Hmm.
And that could be, back to the gold standard, tried,
Yeah.
tested, and true,
Yeah.
because that's historically that's what we've always done. We've
Yeah. Yeah.
debased the money so far, and people realize, like, okay, we're going back to gold. Don't worry.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, okay, we can trust the money now.
Hmm.
There's also an idea of a hybrid system between gold on a blockchain or Bitcoin
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah.
Um, I think gold on a blockchain makes a lot of sense. Like Peter Schiff said that gold on a blockchain would be great. I told Peter Schiff, why don't you do it?
Yeah.
You've got the resources to pull that off. He didn't respond, but
No.
I'm not I'm not a big account
Yeah.
yet. But it makes perfect sense because then you can transfer your gold ownership via the blockchain almost instantly. So that is kind of, I think, one of the more ideal situations for a new monetary system is a blockchain-backed gold currency or Bitcoin or a hybrid of the two kind of would make sense.
Yeah.
So that could be something that we're looking for is that type of reset. So it's either a quick flash crash and then go right back into money printing really quick, or the debt system itself blows up and we're going full reset, and it's going to be probably 6 years of hardship before things get back on track.
Yeah.
The markets should actually rebound pretty quickly, though, I would expect, just based upon chart patterns. But it is a market; those things can keep going down for decades. You really
Yeah.
never know. So that's all held up by debt too.
Exactly.
Like all these corporations, they issue shares. That's basically debt. You have sovereign bonds with your countries. You have corporate bonds with these companies. The whole thing is just a big spider web of debt, just
Yeah.
piled on top of debt.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never even thought of that though, really, because if someone produces more shares, they're shares out of nothing, aren't they? Thin air again.
Yeah, well, they're backed by the value of the company. So, assuming the company has values, then the shares technically have value. But yeah, that's essentially borrowing or raising capital for operating costs or research and development for these companies. They're issuing debt. Yeah, it's
Wow.
all a big game. Yeah,
Wow. 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 It, it, it can't carry on, can it? How can it carry how can it carry on?
yeah.
How much thin air can you keep producing before there's no thin air?
So, yeah, that's kind of a question you kind of ask at every banking crisis. Like, oh, this is the one. It's over. Dot
Yeah.
com bubble happened. It's like it's all over. Um, 2008, it's all over. We can't rebuild back from this. But lo and behold, we found another source of thin air, and we just pumped the balloon back up again.
Yeah.
It's all fake. I think you can keep running the system probably until more people discover that it's all a scam, kind of.
Yeah.
But there's not necessarily something wrong with debt.
No.
I think
No.
it's just the amount of debt and the disregard of actual money. Um, there's just so much of the debt when we've got too much of a supply.
Yeah.
But assuming you have very, very little debt, like a company that has very little debt and good income, that's a great company to invest in.
Sure.
Uh, Similarly to the way I would look at the United States corporation, where they didn't have a lot of debt back in the early 1900s, and they had resources and they had potential. So you invest in that potential for that company to grow, and boy, did they grow over the past 100 years. So right now, the debt to income of this company of the United States, basically the debt to GDP ratio, it's out of whack. It's not great. It's like 130% debt to GDP is the ratio, I think. I have
Mm,
to check on that figure, but there's more debt than there is income. So that's not ideal for a company. You can operate that like that for a couple of years, maybe a decade, since it's such a large entity. But in the end, you really have to get your ducks in order to turn that company around to get profitable again. And
yeah,
if you don't, then it's you go bankrupt, just like
yeah,
any other company.
yeah.
It's not what you
Wow.
expect.
It blows your
Different
mind,
way of
doesn't it?
yeah,
Because
different way of thinking about
because in a way, like going through my head, you just think to yourself, everything's just fake. A whole economy has been built on nothing, and and I'll probably appreciate more in the days of the gold standard, where at least you had something. It was backed against something.
You had a baseline, yeah.
Yeah, it had a base. Yeah, exactly. Had a great way to put it. Had a baseline. But since that's gone, then it's just yeah, it's just trust, isn't it? And
Mm-hmm.
the trust is built on how big your money printer is, really.
No, no,
In a
no. I
way,
would say
no.
it's no. I would say it's still backed by the rule of law, for one,
Okay.
and the potential of that country. So then you go down the rabbit hole of the United States. Are they trustworthy? Like worldwide, the China and Russia, everybody kind of knows the United States is kind of they're really paying off their credit cards by opening up new credit cards.
Yeah.
It's kind of obvious for the whole world to see.
Yeah.
So then, is the trust still there? Yeah, but you're walking on thin ice, I would say.
Yeah.
Um, but you still have a potential. The United States still has vast amounts of resources. They have vast amounts of human resources that are fairly well educated. And as long as that remains strong, then you still got a shot. You still have a chance. But the country, if it does get very divided with the political landscape, and this could be the catalyst of something really bad,
Yeah.
but if you get left versus right and you exacerbate that and carry it out into the future, you have a country that's divided.
Hmm.
Um, so what do other countries think about that? What does Russia? What does China think about that?
Yeah.
That makes you a little more unstable. And if you're a little more unstable, I don't necessarily want to lend you money
Okay.
because I'd have to take a higher risk premium for that. You're going to have to give me a better interest rate if I'm going to risk my capital in your whatever it is you're doing over there, left versus right. So if you do have some civil unrest, maybe civil war, or something like that, it could send the bond market into a tizzy where the yields are going to have to be really high, and you may have some failed bond auctions in the treasury markets where
Mhm.
other countries are just like, yeah, I'm really not interested. We got a better risk return in India, for example.
Yeah.
Like they look like they're doing really well. We're going to take some of their sovereign bonds
Yeah.
instead. We're going to start divesting from whatever situation you have going over there. It doesn't pertain to me. I don't care. I'm just worried about my capital. I'm worried about my people in my country. You do you, and I'm out. So that
Yeah.
could be really, really bad. So you're already walking on thin ice with the trust there. So it is backed on trust as long as you can maintain that trust. And that's the good thing about sound money, gold, silver, Bitcoin, is it trusts itself. Like,
Yeah.
do you have a shiny rock? Yes, I have a shiny rock. It's in my hand. I trust that it's in my hand. I can see it, taste it. It's there.
Yeah.
And same thing electronically with Bitcoin. I know my Bitcoin wallet address if you have any Bitcoin. I know it's there. I can verify that it's there.
Hmm.
I'm basically holding it in a cloud.
Wow. It's interesting, isn't it? So, oh, this makes so much more sense. My mind's just going mad with this information.
Mm.
Um, but it makes so much more sense. It really does. It really does.
We
Um,
can have so many questions coming out of this, and then the next episode can get even deeper into some of these ideas.
Definitely.
I mean, I definitely don't want to come across like I know everything,
No.
but I've definitely looked into this, and I'm just more of a logical thinker,
Yes, me too. Yeah.
somebody that solves puzzles,
Yeah.
and you just kind of look at it, look at the data, and you can kind of walk away with a reasonable, logical story as to
Yeah.
what's happening and why.
Yeah.
It's not the end all be all, though. It's like I always say, it's a trade setup. It can always fail.
Yeah.
Um, we don't know in the end. We just try to capture value where we can.
It's fascinating. I've read, you obviously know a lot, but a lot more about it than me. But I think in the same way, and that's what I try and do is I try and piece it all together in a logical way, but with a very open mind.
Yeah,
Um, but and then try and
and
join
that's
the
the thing with it. Having the open mind is key. So, like,
yeah,
you had a lot of, you had like three or four people that called the 2008 financial collapse. Peter
yeah,
Schiff was one of them. He's
yeah,
renowned for doing so.
mm,
But he also thought that was the end of America. We're not going to be able to inflate this bubble again. Well,
sure,
guess what? They
yeah,
did. Keep an open mind.
yeah,
They can still pump up the bubble for some reason.
yeah, yeah. Expect the unexpected.
Oh, for sure.
Always. But the nice thing about it is, and this is for me personally, is to view it in a logical sense. Then you start to build a logical map in your head that you don't marry, but it just becomes how do I explain it in my head? Almost a cloud of information with loads of twinkly dots everywhere, but they're there and you can visually see them. And
Yeah.
then when things start to happen, those little dots may join here and there. And then in your mind, or in my mind, logically, you think, oh, yeah, crikey. Yeah, that could happen, couldn't it? Oh, yeah, that could happen. Yeah,
Yeah.
that could happen. And
And
then,
as those pieces come together, you say, okay, what's the next logical step?
yeah,
And you just kind of work from that and
yeah,
then plan accordingly. And if something changes that you didn't expect, then you have to reevaluate and do so kind
exactly.
of on your toes, stay on your
Yeah.
feet.
But it just ends up with another little dot there, and it's still there. And for one day, it might get joined, and you think, oh, yeah, now I can see that now. I wasn't ready for it then, but I can see it now
Well,
because things
it's
change.
not there's no end to it.
Yeah.
We're not going towards an end goal.
No.
This is an ongoing process, and
Yeah.
you're constantly having to be diligent
Yeah.
in curating your money, your capital, what you
Yeah.
do have.
Yeah.
And if you don't, somebody else will.
100%. Yeah, it's
Go ahead,
really,
cut you off again. I keep doing that.
no, you're right there, mate. You're fine. So, really, through all possible eventualities, then probably we've got to try and protect whatever we can outside of our normal day-to-day use of currency because we have to live. But that protection value has got to be in something sound, doesn't it?
Or something that's growing. But
Yeah,
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 if you think of gold, gold is sound money, has been, I mean, time tested 5,000 years.
yeah.
But it doesn't grow at the same rate that Nvidia does,
No,
or other, high flying stocks. It doesn't grow like Google does necessarily, or Tesla.
yeah,
But you can be damn sure that you can buy the same thing that you could buy 200, 300 years ago. You can buy the same thing today with that amount of gold.
yeah.
So in a monetary debasement at the same time as a economic contraction, it just kind of makes sense that I want to not necessarily try to get a return on my investment. I just
Okay.
want my investment to return to me.
What a great. Say that again, Cam, because that is brilliant.
So in yeah, it is. I just thought of this just now. Just
It's brilliant.
catchphrase.
Yeah,
So in a time where you have monetary debasement and an economic contraction, You don't necessarily want a return on your investment, or you would not expect a return on your investment. You just want your investment to return to you.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so that's what gold is there for you. At the bottom of markets when we're looking at economic expansion along with monetary debasement, yeah, go with the risk on stocks. Look at the ones that are going to fly high. Then you can start deploying some of your well saved capital from gold and start to put some out there, put some risk on in order to get a return on your investment. And then it goes right back into your monetary base, your baseline, basically. Go back into gold um, or US dollar cash. But like I said, that's getting debased
Yeah. Can
every
you,
day. But
yeah, can you just quickly explain your your outlook of what money debasement is, please?
the expansion of money supply. So
Mhm,
all markets work with supply demand economics,
mhm,
whether you want them to or not. The more supply you have to meet that supply with additional demand, which over the past 20, 30 years, the United States has been great at doing that,
mhm,
which is why you don't have major inflation, but you can, issue treasury debts and there's always buyers. That was the place to put your capital worldwide. So the supply that was put onto the market was met with demand, where you have it's still debasement, but the demand was still propping it up. You still have buyers. When you start to lose that demand, you don't have as many buyers. That supply is just going to come onto the market and just proliferate and really, really debase the currency even faster.
mhm,
But that's like the extreme part of debasement. But every day they're printing money. I mean, it's like toilet paper.
mhm,
Congress just spends and finds new ways to spend, and then they spend to hide the spending that they spend. And sometimes they just say, "Hey, we lost track of $1 trillion. Sorry about that." And it's like, "What? Are you crazy? $1 trillion is just don't know where it went."
mhm,
Um, that's debasement. And where did it go?
mhm.
It just disappeared into black ops projects or something. Somebody put it in their pocket.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just proliferating extra currency units. So if you have, you know, take Bitcoin for example, there's 21 million currency units of, of Bitcoin, actual Bitcoin. That is divisible, um, I think a million times divisible, but actual Bitcoin, there's 21 million. It's not getting debased because it's fixed to the code. The code says it cannot be debased anymore. You
Yeah.
cannot have additional supply that comes onto that blockchain the
Yeah.
way it stands right now. The future could change the protocol where they could issue additional Bitcoin. I think that would be devastating, but it's possible.
Yeah.
Gold, you have a very limited debasement, and it's not easy to debase it. Where you send out the mining companies, they mine the gold, purify it after extracting it, and then you have additional gold supply.
Yeah.
And that supply tends to be met with demand. And once demand outstrips the supply, your price goes up.
Yeah.
If your supply outstrips the demand, your price goes down. So it takes a lot of effort to debase gold. It
Yeah.
would take, I think, even more effort to debase Bitcoin, the way the protocol kind of works.
Yeah.
Um, but the U.S. dollar or even your British pounds, it's a keystroke. It
Yeah.
doesn't take much. It just takes somebody with a bright idea and a keystroke, and you have additional currency units where you didn't have those before. So if you had 21 million currency units in the US dollar, and they say, we're going to create 21 million more, your purchasing power is halved
Yeah.
immediately. They did that in the 1934, the executive order,
Yes.
1933, executive order 6102, 6108. I forget what the number is. But yeah, they confiscated gold, and there was fines up to $10,000, I think it was, which is an exorbitant amount of money back then. It's like 8 years of your normal income, so
Mhm.
350 to $400,000 today's value, um, and jail time up to 10 years. I'd have to check on the stats again, but that's what I remembered looking at. And once, like after 6 months, once they've accumulated enough gold from the population, what they could, they immediately raised the price of gold to 35, 30, it might have been $38 an ounce. And it was like 80% overnight, immediately. And that was done by issuing more currency units of the US dollar.
Okay.
Instant debasement. It's just gone. So now your gold is more expensive. Did gold get any more shiny during that time?
No.
Not at all. Your US dollar got dirtier.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
It's all relative. It's crazy how everything ties to this and that, and it's kind of everything is distorted, kind of perverted the
Mm,
way that you think it is, but it or the way it should be. It's like distorted, so you can't figure out what's going on. I mean, I've
mm,
studied this stuff for years, and I still find out new things.
mm.
Um, I'm not as deep in the woods as, say, Lynn Alden or Jeff Snyder, that you'll
Yeah.
see them on social media. They're fairly
I
well known.
I do. Yeah.
They are deep in the weeds of how individual currencies work and how they work versus each other, the euro dollar market versus
Yeah.
the dollar market.
Yeah.
It's a big mess.
It's amazing.
I once mentioned that to a financial advisor that I know locally, and I'm like, dude, this financial system is it's just cobwebs and then new spider webs on top of those cobwebs, and then
Yeah.
everything's interconnected into a big mess. It's
Yeah.
horrible. And
Yeah.
what he said to me is like, yeah, but it works. I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, but it it's just such a mess. Who can
Yeah.
figure out anything that's going on in here?
Yeah.
You have so many different assets that you can throw capital at,
Yeah.
so many options, so many futures contracts. And you look on our charts on our trading software and stuff, and you type in any random three letters, and you're going to come up with some ticker symbol that you can trade.
Yeah.
There's hundreds of thousands of different potential options, and each one of those has an expiry of that, and then a new contract comes in. It's just everything on top of everything is just it's too much to sort out for average people.
Yes. It's yeah. That the
I don't even
when I start to think that listening to you, I've heard a lot of these things. I haven't done a deep dive like you have, but I've heard a lot of it, and I do come up with a conclusion that I'm not going to swear on this podcast. I'm going to be a good boy, but I do come up with a conclusion and think, what the hell? How what a mess! How the heck? How the heck does anyone know what they're doing? Because it just seems
and
so
that
like the most
might be it.
complicated of complicated systems
Yeah,
that I don't know. It still seems to work. We still go on that hamster wheel every day, and somehow someone gives us some money at the end of the month or the end of the week or the end of the day, and then we
yeah.
just churn out and go out and do that thing again. It's weird. It's so weird. So weird. But
The
I don't know about you. I just can't see, albeit I'm very naive and I have no idea at that level, but I just can't see how that can continue forever. I really can't.
yeah, and how it can bring itself full circle.
Yeah.
How the circuit completes. It's like you don't even know where you started with this stuff.
Yeah.
How do you know how this is going to end?
Yeah.
It's a debacle. It's
Mm.
so horrible. Um, what was I going to say? Just thinking of something. Yeah, I lost it.
Can we very briefly before the time's rattling on, but have you got time still?
Yeah, yeah, I've got time.
Okay, cool. So where do you see silver plays a role in all of this?
That should be looked at probably more as a manufacturing metal, and it's
Okay.
going to be used in a lot of electronics, and electric vehicles are really needing silver, from what I can tell. There should be pretty big demand for silver in its manufacturing capability.
Yeah.
I was listening to somebody speak to this, and they were like, it's not acting like money is, where gold is kind of doing its thing, um, kind of preserving value. Silver is, of course, the high flyer, and eventually maybe it does catch up with gold and kind of acts the same way. But the way that it's been acting is just kind of expecting not so good things to be coming, similar to copper. Copper's kind of been in a downtrend, and that's kind of saying manufacturing was down.
Yeah.
And you think of gold and transactional value and whatnot, and do we really need silver as a transactional value with the potential nowadays of, well, cryptocurrency for one,
Yeah.
but being able to send gold, it's easier to send your gold around now. And silver is heavier. Like you're going to need a lot more of it to equal the same amount.
Yeah.
And who's playing gold and silver? You expect central banks to be playing in it. Large financial institutions probably have decent holdings of it. And then there's the stacking community that are like, we want sound money. I don't care what your toilet paper currency is doing.
Yeah.
So silver is, I'm looking at it more like a manufacturing type thing. So if you have an economic slowdown, manufacturing comes down, silver should remain pretty stable in a debasing monetary inflationary period. It should be fairly stable. Price should go up slightly, but the price, as soon as manufacturing of these electronic products and stuff comes back, it should come back really hard, and you'd have an explosion in the price. Like demand would outstrip the supply very, very quickly. So I'd see it as potential moonshot type of chart where it does nothing for quite a while, and then all of a sudden it breaks out, and you're at 600. What was the chart that I showed you? I shared a chart with you one time. I think it was $600 or $700, $800 silver in 10 years time, 12
Okay.
years time, something like that. And that would just speak to the demand of it. That could speak to inflation getting really out of control as well, and we don't know. Um, but yeah, I definitely don't see it going to zero.
No.
It should outpace gold though in the long run, especially if it gets some kind of monetary value back. It seems like people don't really look at silver as money as much as gold now. I mean, gold is
Really?
kind of the start. That's kind of what I'm seeing. Yeah.
What, over in the States?
Yeah, yeah. People wish they could afford gold, I guess. They're like, well, I can get a little bit of silver, and they just don't feel good about themselves having silver instead of gold. Because I was talking to somebody over here, and they're like, well, if I could afford it, I'd buy you know, 10 ounces of gold. And I was like, so would everybody else. You're not speaking to any surprises here.
Yeah.
So he was buying some silver, and I was like, good on you. Yeah, I've got silver.
Yeah.
Actually, like I was saying, I think I want more gold because of
Yeah.
the way gold is acting. So I might want to diversify. Um, so that there was something that I said in Camel's podcast, I think the first interview that I did with him. It was there was nowhere to run to, nowhere to run to.
Yeah.
And I think looking at the charts, and like I did not expect gold to do as well as it has over the past 6 months
Yep.
since it broke out. And because of that happening, that changes my view on things and what I would think is happening. But
Yeah.
what I would expect is some kind of pullback in gold, and then that thing is going to expand for 5 years. So probably a pullback for 3 to 6 months in gold. I don't think we're at a bad spot to be buying gold anywhere above $1,800 per ounce US. I don't know what that translates to in GBP, but yeah, anything above 1,800 to 1,900, I think it's a buy, and the target I think is going to be almost double from where it's at in the next 5 years. Is kind of what it looks like. I'm not done working on the charts. I'm supposed to do them this weekend, but I just haven't had time yet. But
Okay.
yeah, that looks like the place to hide long term. I do think you experience some drawdown starting in 2025 early on, but I think you're leading into a buying opportunity, and I think that may be the place to hide. It's kind of where nobody's looking as well. Like people are
Really?
like, well, you go into treasuries, that's the place to hide. gold doesn't do very well because of blah blah blah, and it hasn't acted like it usually acts. Um, like it did really well in the year 2000 through
Yeah.
2008. That was an 8 year span where it just went up, higher high, higher low, and just kept going up. I think we're on the verge of something similar to that, where your stock market is kind of up and down, choppy, maybe severely down, and gold it just keeps trucking, and it's doing just fine. So that might be the hiding place. It might not fly high like Google or your Nvidia, but it'll keep you on the straight and narrow
Hmm.
until the problems are over,
Yeah.
which would probably be it could be 8 to 10 years before it's all sorted out.
Yeah.
And then if you're sitting in gold, you're looking pretty, and you're just watching with a bowl of popcorn. You're like, yeah, you guys figure it out. I'm sitting pretty.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what I've been looking at the past like 2 weeks. I was like, wow. And I've been singing that song, like nowhere to run to you. And I'm just thinking, wow, gold really looks like it is the place. And I wasn't seeing that happening. I saw everybody taking a haircut off of everything. But I think gold bounces first, bounces back, and you're leading into a buying opportunity
Yeah.
coming in early 2025. Maybe Bitcoin, maybe. We'll
Mm,
see. But
yeah.
you're not sure about that one, are you?
No, I'm sitting on the fence with Bitcoin. I mean, I'm a big Bitcoin person. I'm absolutely massive on it. Um, but I don't know. There's something just nagging me in my hearts of heart. Um, Not that I'm going to lose any faith into it, because I've got a lot of faith into what it is. But I just can't see the massive numbers that people are talking about yet. I can't see it.
Yeah,
I can't see it, Kem. I can't see it.
yeah.
Um,
I can't see it yet either. I would think that the thinking behind it would have to change.
yeah,
So
something's
is
got to really
Bitcoin
change.
sound money? It's not necessarily sound money. It has the potential to be sound
Yeah,
money,
yeah,
similar to gold. So, in order for those very, very large numbers to happen, you would likely see a change in behavior
yeah,
with regards to investment
yeah,
if you have financial calamities throughout your financial system, and all of a sudden Bitcoin is like ticking up, and he's like, okay, wait, Bitcoin is waking up to this.
yeah,
Bitcoin's telling us something. Gold's already going.
yeah,
Bitcoin wants to catch up to that. So then, yeah, then I could see those big numbers, and they'd be
definitely.
pretty
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
But until that behavior changes,
yep,
they basically just turned it into a trading product where people are like, number go up, number go down. Oh, I
yeah,
want a long, I want a short, and
yeah,
I make money because you're still chasing money.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting. It's very interesting.
There's a
But for,
potential for it though. So
oh,
then
100%.
you'll have an overperformance in that. So if you have Bitcoin and gold being the same thing, Bitcoin would overperform because you have a risk factor of a potentially it ends up being a, a safe haven asset
Yeah,
in something that's maybe coming. So you're kind of playing on that
yeah, yeah,
potential. So you
yeah.
can have a 10x return from gold. Um, Gold will do its thing; it preserves your capital. Bitcoin might do that and then some.
Hmm.
Is kind of my view on it.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense. It's too, I don't know. I just think it's too early. But I have a lot of faith in it, and it's just going to be one of those where I hold it, I'll eat my popcorn and just see what happens.
I have a lot of faith in its potential.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
definitely.
know if they're going to allow it because it's a huge threat
Mm,
to standard business that these governments do.
yeah,
Because the standard government playbook is make everybody poor, have that economic contraction.
yep,
Then we print money, put it back into the things that we want to grow. We don't want Bitcoin to grow because that's an escape.
yep,
We don't necessarily want gold to grow because
yep,
that's an escape.
yeah,
They can't really help that with
no,
central banks buying it all up.
yeah,
Hard to keep the price down at that point.
yeah. But with those two things, I look at that as a little bit of logic that if there was potential seen in both of them, then wouldn't it make sense? And I try and look at it and think, okay, if I could manipulate everything and make it work for me and be the king and keep the peasants, then I would very slowly take it out of reach of the peasants. So
Yes,
they can't have it
very
anyway.
much.
They just can't have it
Hmm.
anyway. But we can. We can have it because we can see the potential in it. Might take a long time for that to come through, and that's what I just get that little feelings going on at the moment. It's just ticking along. Maybe we're going to get into recession. Hard times are going to come along. By then, no one's got any money. We can't,
Yeah,
the majority of the populace hasn't got any money to put into any of this stuff, and yet the people that have money are taking it into their safe havens, letting it go through that process. And I love the way you said it earlier. This is very like a 5-year-old would think, but that's it just sits inside of me and it just makes sense from everything I'm observing over time, really.
yeah. And what you're saying is they're not going to let the peasants have their cake and eat it too.
No.
It just made me think of our presidential candidates that we have here in the United States.
Mm.
The Kamala Harris came out with her economic plan, which involved to pass a law to stop price gouging in like supermarkets or necessary goods.
Yeah.
And if you look historically into how that plays out, you end up with shortages
Yeah. Yeah.
where you're you can't raise the price on things, but you're paying a certain amount for them, so you're making no profits. So
Yeah.
the distributor is going to go to a whole other country and be like, well, China's willing to pay us, 20% more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going over there,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But then if they're doing price controls like that, where they're controlling the price of things, who's to say they don't, control access to certain things?
Yeah.
Like you're saying, the peasants, they don't necessarily want us to have sound money before they debase the currency.
Yeah.
Do they stop us from buying gold? Do they stop us from buying Bitcoin
Yeah.
or whichever it's going to be? Maybe they give free access to Bitcoin, no access to gold, and everybody runs into Bitcoin. Then they just, okay, you guys are trapped in Bitcoin, crash that. It was actually gold was the correct answer. Gold.
Ex- exactly. It's
Something of that nature. It's always look one way, go the other type of deal.
yeah. Or hedge
That's
your bet.
financial marketing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Hedge your bets.
definitely.
Always, always. So silver's got a part to play then, because I know a lot of people that watch the podcast and obviously my channel are sort of big silver people.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, maybe silver is a lot like Bitcoin in the sense that there's the potential there
yeah,
that it regains the thinking of being a monetary unit.
yeah,
If that comes back, then yeah, you're getting overperformance in silver,
yeah,
and then that silver to gold ratio reaches the teens or something like that, which
yeah,
has happened before.
yeah,
So yeah, you'd have major overperformance in silver.
yeah,
Definitely potential there, but you're betting on the potential of that happening. You don't know whether or not it's going to happen, so kind
absolutely.
of hedge your bets in. I see potential there, so I'm going to allocate 10-15% of my capital into the high flyer to maybe double my stack in the future,
Mm,
something like
yeah,
that. I
interesting.
wouldn't go all in on any one thing though. Like
No,
being all in on Bitcoin, being all in on gold, all in silver. You're missing out on other things, even the stock market.
yeah, exactly.
If you would have been worried about the stock market and like, no, I'm going full on Peter Schiff into gold. I'm not buying any stocks. You
Yeah,
missed out on a 70% rally in the
yeah,
past year and a half, 2 years. You could have put your gold into that and had 70% more gold.
yeah. And do you
Speaking
think,
honestly.
Peter, and if gold flops and you'd lose quite a bit of money, will Peter Schiff give a shit about you?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, he's just an influencer like anybody else.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, he's worried about himself and his shareholders.
Of course he is.
What what I always found funny is like if you love gold so much, why are you selling it?
Yeah,
Keeps don't you want to hold on to that, Peter?
Yes.
Because he's a fairly wealthy man.
Yeah.
Um, why are you selling your gold?
Yes. Yeah.
It's just
Yeah. Quite often, I will sit and watch some of these people and just think, why are you even doing this? I'll be sitting on an island enjoying myself, not worrying about that, not slagging off
or
everything and having arguments
same thing
and doing whatever.
with Bitcoin. Same thing with Bitcoin, though.
Yep. So
Why are
same.
these exchanges selling Bitcoin if it's so valuable?
Yeah.
Or MicroStrategies. Why are
Yep.
you selling the shares of your company if your company is so valuable?
Exactly.
Something funny's going on here. It just seems like a lot of offloading is going on everywhere.
Yes.
Warren Buffett's selling Apple shares like crazy.
Yep.
He wants to raise cash. I'm sure he's not the only one.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes
So
you
you're
wonder, doesn't it?
sitting on an island wondering what's going on.
For sure. For sure. For sure. Wow. You've blown my mind there, Kem. To wrap things
That's
up, can I ask
good.
like this crazy question?
Always.
What do you think of CBDCs? And do you think they're going to play a part?
Well, yeah,
Have you got any view on it?
yeah. I think they're coming. They're already ready, and they will be implemented, and you will beg for them.
Yeah.
I think that comes along with the financial reset.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think they last. I think it's going to be an experiment, and it's going to be a failed experiment.
Mhm.
But I think it's going to be 4 or 5 years before it really fails.
Yeah.
So the 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 vision that I see with central bank digital currencies coming out is some kind of financial calamity where your banking system is locked up somehow, probably through freezing of credit,
Yeah.
and they have to provide liquidity to your population or even to banks. Liquidity needs to be provided instantly. So they say, download this app, get this running, and you'll have access to capital. We understand that there's food shortages and food is getting very expensive. So we've allocated a universal basic income and it's sitting there in your little blockchain wallet that you've downloaded. So that'll be like the start of how they're getting people into it. Like, oh, I get free food. Okay, cool. I'm hungry, so this is a godsend. This is great. Thank you, government, for saving our asses.
Yeah.
But then the capital controls and um, there's so much programming that could be done with that. People are going to start to wake up to now I'm getting my money taken away because I said something online that they didn't like, or I'm a dissenter, so I have limitations on my funds. I can't spend outside of my little small little region within a 3 to 4 block radius, and you're trapped more and more, and people are going to look at that and be like, I need to escape this, and then gold, silver, Bitcoin become way more valuable because they're sought after at that point. But they might be hard to get.
Yeah.
That's my concern.
Might be too late by then.
It depends. So if we have enough fleeting capital out of this CBDC system, we can somehow create another uh, dual economy going on, one outside, one inside the system. If our black market essentially gets big enough to be a competitor, that would change the tides of things.
Yeah.
And I would suspect that would happen with people waking up to what's actually happening with their central bank digital currencies, and they will opt out. And that's how the central bank digital currency would fail, in my opinion,
Yeah.
is people realize that it's a complete disaster. This is horrible. Get me out of this. I don't want to have anything to do with this country
Yeah.
because you're controlling every aspect of what I do. This is no fun anymore. I don't want to play this game.
Yeah.
That's the central bank digital currency idea that I think initially people are going to beg for it, and then it turns south. I don't think it turns south quickly. I think it takes 4 or 5 years before it starts to people start raising eyebrows as to what's going on with it, and then it goes downhill pretty quickly thereafter.
Yeah. So are you implying that once we start to realize as a populace that our I don't like saying this, money is being played with, which is basically affecting how we can live in a Western world, then there'll be some sort of uproar against it, forcing people to go to do other things. And do you think that the powers to be would probably already realize and understand that because they're not stupid? And do you think
Yeah.
they could prep us? Because they're already talking about censorship via social media now, and we haven't got CBDCs in. Do you think they could be prepping us very slowly to get used to the idea of censorship and bits and pieces like that before they introduce something where everyone goes, well, we're censored anyway, so it doesn't really matter, to stop that from
Yeah.
happening? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or am I
So you
digging
have
too deep?
the boiling of the frog
Yeah,
scenario where you put a
yeah,
frog in cold water and slowly bring him to a boil, and he
mm,
doesn't realize what's happening. I think that's been going on for the past 20 years
yeah,
pretty heavily.
yeah,
It's a slow, they have all the time in the world
yeah.
to implement what they want. They don't have to worry about paying their rent
Nope,
next month.
nope.
They can sit on their hands and just let things destroy themselves, or
Yeah,
they can help them along to implement what they want.
yeah,
The powers that be, they know where everything's going. They're going to push it in that direction, and they
sure.
are likely protected from that,
Yeah,
probably through gold. We assume so because of the chart. It's kind of saying capital has flowed into
yeah,
gold.
yeah,
Now they're marking it up, make it more expensive.
yeah,
Bitcoin has not really done that. It's kind of looks like it's in a distribution pattern,
yeah,
um, but it might wake up next year at some point.
yeah.
Um, so we are getting boiled slowly, and the more people I think we can wake up to this fact, the less likely it is they're able to do it.
Yeah.
If people see it, people will mentally prepare themselves for hard times are coming. They're going to make us beg for something that we don't want,
Sure.
and they'll be awake before it even happens. So prepare yourself mentally is the most important. Like financially, yeah, we want to try to position ourselves appropriately, but mentally prepare yourselves for a potential outcome of what they're trying to do. So
Mm,
you're not surprised by it and you know what actions you want to take out of that. So you're not just hit with it one day all of a sudden
yeah,
and you just go along with it like the majority of population that went through with the vaccination. It's like, okay, let's get this vaccination. We need it as soon as possible,
yeah,
return life to normal. Nobody really thought about, hey, let's go through some clinical trials. Let's see what the long term effects are on this. We didn't have time. We didn't have time to do that.
yeah,
It was just, yeah, give it to me. Then we get back to work. Everything's back to normal. That's what we need because the
yeah,
economy is going to be really bad if we don't. I'm not going to have a job. I'm not
yeah.
going to eat. It is the end of the world. It looked like the end of the world. So, yeah, vaccinate, mass vaccinations. So don't let yourself get vaccinated financially is kind of the viewpoint. Like mentally prepare yourself for what's coming.
Love that. That's another great saying. I've got. I'm gonna listen to this back and write down quite a few headlines.
Oh
Don't.
yeah, I'd recommend everybody write down notes because this is part of the conversation, right?
Yeah,
I don't know everything. You don't know everything,
yeah,
but the collective mind, we get enough of us together,
sure.
we can get some really cool ideas coming together, really understand what's going on because it's all
Yeah,
just logic.
yeah,
Logically, what is the expectation? So yeah, I'd
yeah,
recommend everybody listening to this write down questions, put them in the comments below. I'll be looking at them for sure, and we'll touch on them in the next podcast.
yeah.
In my opinion,
Definitely, definitely. That's. I love that one. I just love what you just said there. Don't let
love that I'm
yourself get
coming back for
finite.
another one.
Oh, mate. Yeah, this is going to be a regular slot for sure, if that's okay with you.
Oh
Don't.
heck yeah! Love
I
to do
don't let yourself get financially vaccinated. That's unbelievable.
it.
That's got a lot of strength in that quote, really. Very
So funny.
interesting indeed.
Like three things that I came up with today that I never thought of before. That's just you bring it out of me. So
No,
props to you, CPM, for
no, it's
having
just
me on.
it's this is one thing I want to go for. If you know anyone that can come, if they ever want to like share their views, this is what I want. I
Hmm.
want as many people with as many different views around
Hmm.
similar subject bases to have
Yeah.
conversations like this because it's just a real eye opener
Yeah.
for all of us on our own little journeys because there's a common denominator between all of us. I
Hmm.
love it. I absolutely love it.
Oh yeah, I'll spread the word. I've already got some ideas in mind.
Absolutely brilliant. And you know, I'm quite open to doing shared ones and getting different people on. It's always cool as well. Is is hopefully over time I just want to get like people with very different opinions on as well
Yeah, to push
because
back on what we're saying. Yeah.
yeah, and to be fair, because I'm an avid person for listening and observing, I quite often hear in people that think they are of an opposite view really aren't. They've just got a different outlook. But
Yeah,
probably the message is very similar.
we're saying the same thing, just speaking a different language, saying it.
Yes, yeah, but believe yeah because they believe in something else is gonna um, provide the outcome. But in true reality, the outcome is all the same, really. To be
Well,
honest,
we're all in this together. This is
exactly.
kind of us versus them is the way I look at it. Not that we
Yeah.
necessarily have to be against anybody, but the main thing is don't be against each other.
Mm,
Get a sense of community, mentally
yeah.
prepare yourself,
Yeah.
and hopefully you'll be better for it and
Yeah.
learn how the money moves.
And it's quite interesting really because I might slag off the boys club or what I call it the boys club, the gentlemen's club. But quite often when I've talked to Camel outside of the podcast or you know anything that we do, and I quite often say like I want to think like the boys club because if I can think like the boys club, albeit it can be quite nasty,
Oh,
um,
you're talking about the good old boys club,
yeah.
the the ones that have the money.
The ones that have the money, you know, what would I do? And we quite often have conversation. What would you do, Camel? What would you really
Yeah,
do? Wouldn't you protect this horrible system that your grandfathers taught you and your fathers taught you and your great grandfathers taught you over the centuries and centuries of being in control of money ever since we've known it? And I try to think like that as well. And I admire them. I do. And I get why they do it. But
oh,
it's
because they're psychopaths. It's
yeah,
you got
no,
to think like a psychopath.
I
You
get
figure it
it. They're
all out.
just they're protecting their legacy.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, it's at the cost of the 99%.
yeah,
But that's been history. Or you know, in this country, blimey, and Europe, we've only
yeah,
ever had kings and peasants. Really,
yeah,
we
yeah.
just got the same
And some
thing, but it's in the 24th century or whatever it is, 23rd
and
century.
some people are totally content being peasants.
Yeah, that's true.
They're okay with it. It's easier. Like a lot of people want to be a business owner, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to run this business. My boss doesn't know what he's talking about." But when it really comes down to it, you don't want to put in that kind of work where you're
Uh,
overseeing other people and still having your own responsibilities. Most people really don't want that. So then they just stick with the give me my paycheck,
yeah,
live my life, whatever it's going to be, and that it is what it is. Instead of
absolutely.
striving for, I'm going to take over. I'm going to start my own company, and I'm going to push forth, and I'm either going to fail or I'm going to succeed,
Yeah,
and it's all on me.
it is. That's amazing, dude. Thank you so much. Where can everyone find you, bud?
You can find me lurking around. I kind of just follow what Camel does.
Yeah,
I follow what Camel does. I kind of post on what Camel does. I've got my Twitter profile at Kemosabi1 on Twitter or X. Read through the stuff that I've written in there to hopefully mentally prepare you. I, I don't post anything else on there because I don't want to clutter it up. I just want that message to come across to people. So I try to keep that profile page clean. Um, you can find me on YouTube. I just started posting videos, but it's mainly just trade concepts and trying to teach newer people how to identify trade setups as they're coming. So,
amazing. Amazing. I'll put your contacts details in the description of the video anyway. So, dude, I've
No,
really
that would be great.
enjoyed. Yeah, of course I will. And
I'm not looking to be famous though. I'm really not in this to be famous. I'm really just
yeah,
trying to help people,
yeah,
giving my input, and if it's helpful, cool. If it's not, good luck. You
yeah.
know, what can I say?
And before you go, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you
Sure.
feel a religious, spiritual context to everything we've spoken about?
Hmm,
Do you think
that's kind of
there's
interesting.
one? Is that a conversation we can have in the future?
Is it a religious context or lack thereof?
Yeah,
Is that something that we can talk about? Heck yeah, let's get into that.
yeah. Okay, cool.
Heck yeah.
I like
I was
that.
just actually talking to somebody about that yesterday and kind
Hmm.
of how it all ties into for that.
Yeah,
So yeah, it'd be great to bring those thoughts and ideas onto the podcast as well.
yeah.
But
It's
yeah, sure.
interesting. It's really interesting, dude. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that.
Thanks for having me. Thanks
No
for
problem.
being a facilitator. You bring out the best in all your guests, man. Good job with what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. I love it. It's if I can do this for as long as I can do it and grow it and just bring awareness and get people talking. That's all I want to do. Get people talking
You know?
and be
Exactly.
free. Yeah,
For your mind.
yeah, definitely, without a doubt. Right, cheers, dude. Thank you very much indeed. Don't go anywhere. I'll talk to you in a second.
Sounds good.
Cheers, bud.